Unique.
All right. Good morning, friends. I'm sorry that I can't be with you in person, but I hope you're going to have a great morning. I hope you're enjoying the lovely food at Scargill. I love Scargill for two things. The scenery there is amazing, and the food is just brilliant. So I hope you're enjoying it. Thank you, Andy, for asking me to come and share with this group. My name is Nicholas. Just a bit about myself. I'm currently a curate. I serve in the Diocese of Southwark in the Kingston Episcopal area. So I'm in between Southwest London towards Surrey in a place called Surbiton, where I've been asked to serve my curacy. I've been here for a year. Prior to that, I was in Durham where I did my theological training. And so a bit of a change for me from a youth worker to become a curate, but it's all good. So this morning, Andy has asked me to share with you the work that I did in Southeast London. And I want to do that, sharing some of the experiences, some of the things that I learned, and hopefully will encourage us. But before I do that, I'd like to tell a story. So let me start with that. A pastor had a kitten that climbed up a tree in his backyard and then was afraid to come down. So the vicar coaxed, offered warm milk, did everything to get this kitten to come down, but it would not. The tree was not steady enough to climb. So the vicar decided that if he tied a rope to his car and pulled it until the tree bent, he could then reach out and get the kitten. That's what he did, all the while checking his progress in the car. He then figured if he went just a little bit further, the tree would bend sufficiently for him to reach the kitten. But as he moved the car a little further forward, the rope broke. The tree went boing, and the kitten instantly sailed through the air out of sight. The vicar felt terrible. He walked all over the neighborhood asking people if they had seen a little kitten. No, nobody had seen a stray kitten. So he prayed, Lord, I just commit this kitten to your keeping, and went on about his business. A few days later, he was at the store and met one of his church members. He happened to look into a shopping cart and was amazed to see cat food. This woman was a cat hater and everyone knew it. So he asked her, why are you buying cat food when you hate cats so much? She replied, you won't believe this. And then told him how her little girl had been begging her for a cat and she kept refusing. Then a few days before, the child had begged again. So mom finally told the little girl, well, if God gives you a cat, I will keep it. She told the vicar, I watched my child go out in the yard, get on her knees and ask God for a cat. And really, vicar, you won't believe this, but I saw it with my own eyes. A kitten suddenly came flying out of the blue sky. It paws outspread and landed right in front of her. Now, the moral of this story is this: we should never underestimate the power of God and his unique sense of humor. And I'm sure that, you're all pioneers and we pray and we do so many stuff. And sometimes we don't see the result of what we are doing. And sometimes God will surprise us. And so I'm going to share with you some of these surprises with the 6 years of leading this project in Southeast London. And I want to do this by framing what I'm going to share in three kind of points. The first one being prayer, and the second one being intentional, and the third one being taking risks. So let me see whether I can share my screen with you. If you can see it, give me a high five or something like that. Can you see my screen? Great, excellent, excellent. All right, so let's start here. Oh, this is what, excellent. So the project was called TYM, and but before I do that, let me say that it all started in 2013. So I've been living in Yorkshire for 4 years, and then I was sent to Southeast London to start this project. The area was, for those of you who know, it's Southeast London in the borough of Greenwich, and that is where the arrow is showing. It is a very strange area, very, very challenging area. And I'll show you this photo to at least give you a sense of what the place looked like. When you see this high-rising building, some of them in a very bad condition, that tells you the sort of people that were in the area. Some of the issues and challenges in the area were, multiple deprivation. There was high level of unemployment and poverty. Most of the people in that area were single parents. There were issues with criminal damages. The drug dealing was a big thing there. Alcohol issue, massive. And most of the young people there had been dropped out of mainstream education. And they were into gang culture, especially, I'm sure you would know, with the knife crime in London. It was rife in that place. Young people are always scared to go out. A lot of violence. And just to give you a picture, for the 6 years that I was there, I was violently attacked multiple times. We had gang folks run into the middle of the session with knives and weapons. And so it was a very, very tough area to go and try and start a youth church. The vision that I had, or we felt that God had given us, was based around Luke chapter 10, 1-9. And if I were to kind of simplify it and break it down, I'm sure you all know what that passage says. Go to them, stay with them, build relationship, tell the good news, and make disciples. And so this is the context that we have, and this is the vision that what God has given us. But how do we go about this? I've always loved this quote from the Missionship book that was written in 2004, I think. It says, start with the church, and the mission will probably get lost. Start with the mission, and it is likely that a church will be found. We knew that the idea of going to start a church and inviting young people to come and worship perhaps wasn't going to be the right place to start with. So we need to think about what we have to do. And the question that I think often we ask as a church is, how do we get people to come and sit on these pews? And I think it's kind of a typical church question. But I think the question that needs to be asked is what I call the God question, and which is, what is God doing in this place? And that is a question I ask myself. What is God doing in this place? I was placed within 3 churches, so it was a team ministry, and all of them were looking forward to having young people coming to the church. But I thought, that isn't going to be a good place to start with. So we need to ask ourselves, what is God doing in this place? And to answer that question and to get answers, I think the first thing for us is prayer. So I went to the 3 churches and shared a vision of what I felt God was calling us to do. Amazingly, 14 people stepped forward. And I said to them, okay, well, in order for this project to begin, a couple of things need to happen. I told them about, the 4 P's. I said, we need premises, we need prayers, we need people, and we need some pounds. So if you can help with any of this, that'd be great. And the 14 people said, well, we are willing to volunteer with you, but we haven't got any experience with youth work or stuff like that. I said, don't worry, I will help you. But the first place we're going to start this is prayer. And I've written prayer, because I'm sure most of you will see this property program that they normally show on TV. They said, if you want to buy a house or if you're into buying a property, the first thing you need to look for is location, location, location. Well, for me, when it comes to ministry or pioneer or anything to do with ministry, I think the first thing we need to look for is prayer, prayer, prayer. So I said to these volunteers, I said, when we met, I said, for the next 6 months, we're not going to do anything. We are going to pray. They said, what do you mean? I said, yes, for the next 6 months, we are going to spend time and pray and seek God's face and ask the question, what do you want us to do? Show us what we're doing in this area, because there was a temptation to rush and do stuff. But I believe that, that may work for some people, but I believe that to do something that is going to be impactful, going to transform people's life, we need to begin with what God has for the people. So what we did was every other Friday, we met in the church and prayed. Of course, I wrote a personal partnership and team. Let me explain what I mean by that. Obviously, I'm sure we all prayed, otherwise we'd all be here. So I prayed myself. I pray like mad. I said, God, I have no idea what to do. This is such a huge area with a lot of needs. Show me what to do. Within the church, I met a gentleman who had a heart for this. And he said, I cannot volunteer with you. I can't do anything, but what I can do to help you is to pray. So I asked him to meet me in the place where we're going to run this project. Without fail, every week, we met there and prayed for an hour. And with the team, we also prayed every other Friday. And then we started dreaming. We started asking God. A picture began to emerge in our mind as we prayed with flip charts. And people having a word, people having a picture, we began to piece all these together. And for me, when I think about this, I'm most reminded about the story in the book of Exodus 17, where the children of Israel were in a very difficult place. They were fighting the Amalekite. And we are told that in that story, Moses went up to the mountain. And that is a picture of prayer for me. He went there and he became tired. And so he had people holding his hands, the priest and Aaron and somebody else. And for me, the team around me were like holding my hands to help me, because this is such a huge thing. We see the same thing in the New Testament, don't we? Jesus go to secluded place to pray. He get up early morning to pray. But on the other occasion, he prays with the disciples, like in the Gethsemane when things were very difficult, even though they couldn't wake up and they were tired, they didn't pray. We see the idea of prayer being at the heart of what Jesus did. So we began to pray. But whilst we're praying, I think part of prayer is also listening. So I went to the community. I said, Lord, show me what you're doing. I know you've been giving us these pictures. You've been giving us these words. And going back to the passage that we had, which was a very, like the vision, in Luke chapter 9, there was an idea, I'm sure you guys will know this, the idea of a person of peace, or what I call the connectors. So I went to the area. I was on my knees in my study. I said, Lord, show me a person of peace in this area. You won't believe what happened. I walked to the estate. As I walk on the street, a young boy by the name Jack Eden King walked up to me and he said, Nicholas, you came to my school the other day and I saw you on the field as well. Do you know I'm a person of peace? And I thought, what? And he said, I'm a person of peace. I can help you, Nicholas. I said, what do you mean? I mean, the fact that he used the exact phrase was a miracle. And I said, explain to me, what do you mean by a person of peace? He said, I know a lot of young people in this place. I can help you. And that was the beginning of TYM, a conversation with a year 8 young boy called Jack. So I began to meet with him and his friends on the street. And over time, I invited 8 of them to come and meet with this team who have been praying every Friday night to kind of get to know them. And it was amazing how that relationship with that little boy began the whole thing that is still going today. He came in and he shared with us about his friends, and it was just a miracle. And so we then began to connect the dots. I started meeting some of these friends. We bought pizza, we brought them into the church, we started talking, and then we started to dream with them. So at this point, he also gave the volunteers, some of them were very scared of the young people on the estate. So they began to feel comfortable having these 8 young people around them, giving them a sense of what it's like to work with young people. So we started our prayer in October. And at this point, we've done the DBS whilst we were praying. I've done a bit of training with them. And so I said to them, we are coming towards April. That is where I believe that we were going to start the project. So prayer, as I said, was kind of what journeyed us to where we got to. And it didn't end there. Prayer was part of everything that we did. And as I continue, sorry, I'm going to be sharing a bit more, but I thought I'll mention that there is a place for strategy. There is a place for strategic thinking and vision. But I think that, in any pioneering work, any work that we do for the Lord, I believe that the building block, the foundation must be prayer. It sounds so basic and we all know it. But I think that if that is not grounded, that is not the heart, I don't know. For me, I don't know any other formula. I don't think any other thing works apart from prayer and from the experience that I had over there. So we then, having talked about prayer, the next thing that we also, I thought was very key for me was being intentional. Yes, we prayed, but we need to have a bit of plan. So I came with a very clear plan that what do we do? So throughout the time we're meeting, I said 6 months, we will start a project. Within the 6 months, having prayed, we will also become a community, because these were random volunteers that I've brought together. And I said, there's no point in starting right away, because in order for us to minister to these young people who come from broken, dysfunctional family, we need to be a family and a community first in order to be able to minister to them. We are going to be like a surrogate parent to some of these young people. And so the 6 months helped us to pray, hear what is on God's heart, but also brought us together. We bonded well as a team, and there was a confidence, there was energy. And I told them that we are going to be, within that, I mentioned the very thing that we're going to do. I said, there was a clear vision. In 6 months' time, we're going to start. We are going to do one step at a time. We need to focus on the people of peace. We are going to build relationship with the local schools, because these are the places where young people congregate. And I used to say, we need to find the bumping spaces. Where do we bump into some of these young people? They are the pitch, the park around the area, they're the school and stuff like that. And I also said that we need to start from where the young people are at. Most of these people were in my team were mostly African volunteers. They have come from a background where their understanding of church is very different. And I said, listen, we do not expect these young people to know how to say prayers and everything. We have to start from where they are. And so it's going to be very basic, but that is how the journey ought to be. We shouldn't assume, or we shouldn't impose something from above. We have to build it from the ground up. And it was a challenging thing for the volunteers, because they feel like, oh, but it's going to take a long time. And I said, it's good. It's better it grows organically, slowly, than rushing things on these young people that they'll be bored. And part of the way we are going to do this is also by the young people. So we're going to get them involved. And so from the 8 young people that came, including Jack, we started bringing them in. We took decision what we are going to do, the equipment that we're going to buy, even to the point that when we started buying equipment, I went with them to Argos. They had my credit card. I don't encourage you to do that. They had all this access to everything that I have. And we went to buy the games. From the word go, they were part of it. Initially, it was hard for the volunteers to understand that concept, but I said, we need to do this with them, not for them. Otherwise, this is going to fall apart if they are not interested. So we're very clear. And so what we then did was that by April, let me show this picture as well, sorry. So I came to the conclusion that this is how we're going to do it. We're going to develop this 3-level model approach. We're going to be dealing with a crowd, but we want to form a community out of the crowd. And out of the community, we are going to launch a congregation. And this is how we're going to do it. We're going to start with a Friday night youth club. The emphasis is going to be on relationship building, just creating a space for these young people who are even fearful of going outside to come to a safe place, build relationship, hang out with your friends, and there'll be a light gospel content of maybe testimony or something of that sort. But again, we are going to design this Friday with them. And the hope is that over time, when they respond to faith, what do? We cannot disciple these young people within that large crowd. So we need to have a community and start to do something. That will be the Bible study. And we hope that God will be working in these young people's lives. And therefore, as they respond, we will then move on to starting a youth congregation. But all this will happen when we feel God wanted it to be. We're not going to rush it. And so that was the picture I gave. My volunteers go bored with this screen. Every time I show it on the screen, They were so bored. And I said, what is our vision? They said, okay, Friday night. Every single meeting, I put it right in front of them. So it became part of their thinking. We knew it. And I nicked this idea from the former chief executive of Tesco. In the book he wrote, he talked about how he used to come to a board meeting and put the vision of Tesco in front of them. And so no wonder Tesco is successful, and I'm sure we all shop at Tesco. But the idea was to make sure that they have this vision right in front of them. And we went through this step. So by April 25th, having prayed, having planned, having done everything, we launched our youth club. And we had 45 young people the first night. It was incredible. We have gotten to know them. The 8 people that became like a mini little team with the adult team were so pleased because we worked together to make sure that this happens. And so on Friday night, we have the format, your typical youth club. There will be activities. And I should say this, we didn't have any community hall. It was a church building. It wasn't an ideal place for running a youth club. We had all sort of theft, damage. They were breaking stuff. Manvika was incredible. She was so generous. She said, Nicholas, when they break it, it will be fixed. So don't worry. But I got to a point where her patience ran out when they started to steal stuff from the church. And what have I gotten myself into? So they will come and then we'll have activity 2 hours. And within that 2 hours slot, I'll do a quick 5-minute talk. And even that, we negotiated this on the first evening. We said, guys, you have 2 hours. What do you want to do with it? And I said, well, I'm only going to ask you for a favor. Can I do a short talk within that 2 hours? And they said, okay, what should we call it? Some of them said, well, we should call it a God slot. Some of them said, we should call it assembly. I said, okay, you decide. So again, even how we structure that came from the young people. And then we started running the Friday. Talking about prayer, while the session is going on, we had a rota of volunteers praying in the vestry. So the night is covered in prayer. Initially, it was hard work. Some of them didn't want to engage with anything to do with a God slot at all. They will be throwing, so they would deliberately fight so that we'll kick them out of the building so that they will miss the God slot. It was hard work, I must admit. Sometimes I ask myself, why am I even doing this? But over time, we began to see a change. I remember one night when I was doing a talk, I will never forget it. You can hear a pin dropped. On that night, we had 12 young people gave their life to Jesus Christ. And that began the journey of starting the next group. So we started gradually. And then we began the Bible study group and discussion. So we were very deliberate. We didn't invite everybody. We say it is for those who want to explore a bit more. And again, I came with a flip chart. I said, guys, what do you want to discuss? They said, we want to talk about God, the Bible, the church. So, and having come up with all the plan, I said, guys, what you've come up actually fit into something we call Youth Alpha. I then brought the Youth Alpha video, showed them the promo. They said, we're happy to do this. And so we then decided to start Youth Alpha. But I knew that we can't do it within the normal time frame. So something that should have taken us about 6 weeks, our Youth Alpha took about 6 months. It was hard work. But I made sure that I didn't want to go, rush this. It has to be at their pace and how they want it. So we actually customized everything and they began to engage. So everything, you have to have an aspect of some sort of entertainment. We did that. And we began to see this Tuesday group grow. So when we're doing the Youth Alpha, I visited a church in Chichester Diocese, a beautiful church in South St. Peter's. They were in Interregnum. And I said, can I come and use your church for a week? And I run a youth group with young people in Southeast London. Most of them have not even been outside of East London before. And they said, bring them. So I took them to this event, Holy Spirit Weekend. And these young people were blown away. God just visited them. It was incredible. It was just amazing. It was really, they really connected with God, and God was speaking to them, and their heart were open to God. And so that was just incredible. And then we came back and they said, can we do that again? And I said to them, of course we'll do that. And so that was it. And that kind of began the journey for us. So there was a desire to do more beyond the Tuesday group. And so what do we do next? And I knew that we have to start a youth church, but I didn't want to force it. I said, God, it has to be something that you initiate. It has to come from the young people. But that is where the risk come in. And I realized that the thing that we have to do is that I don't have to control this. It has to come from the young people. We shouldn't be afraid to try new things. And so the Youth Alpha led to doing this trip, every year. Then we also did Soul Survivor. Again, having done something on the estate, having taken them to Chichester, I thought it would be good to expose them to a community where they can meet other young people around their age. So we did Youth Soul Survivor. It was a risky thing. I thought you'll be hard, work, these are very difficult cases. How are they going to behave going to, Soul Survivor? So I took a group of them there. And this was the first group that we took. And whilst we were there, I panicked. At the end of every worship, they disappear. And I said, Coach, what are these people? They won't even come and eat. I said to my other volunteers, I'm worried about these kids. Not knowing, each time they disappear, they'll go and shoot a video. So we came back from Soul Survivor. I was so tired. I was sitting in the house, and the young people said, Nicholas, see this. They had made a video. And in that video, they said this: we want to start a youth church. We want to tell our friends about Jesus. We want them to come and know him just as we have experienced him. And I was in tears. Oh no, it's amazing. So I came and I showed this to my volunteers. And we then felt that maybe if this is what they want to do, let's do it. Again, we sat down with them. We said, where do you want us to do this? Initially, they said we shouldn't run this from where we ran the youth club because of the violence and all that is going on, because we had access to the two other churches. So we thought, okay, let's start the Sunday night in the other building. So we started there. To be honest, it was the bad decision. It didn't work because young people, this gang, they have some turfs. So some young people don't want to cross to other area. And so when we moved the church over there, it didn't work because people were scared of the other young people in that particular area. And so we then brought it back to where we ran the youth church. And it was hard work. When we gathered to meet, we have people throwing stuff because those are the ones that wouldn't want to come to the church, and they wouldn't allow these ones to also worship. But over time, we came up with strategy. We have to constantly be reflecting what is working. How do we change this? Eventually, with prayer and with God's guidance, we managed to turn things around, and it started to grow. So we began running youth church. So at this point, we have the Friday night youth club, which is great for young people to come and have games and activities and all these things. We have the Tuesday night Bible study going on. And at this point, we have the Sunday youth congregation. From the time we start to when we have the youth congregation, it has taken us 2 years. So it didn't happen overnight. We were very careful and I guess not rushing the process. So the key thing about the youth church, again, was young people led and encouraging the volunteers to, be there around them, to just let them engage. So we everything that we did was led with the young people. I remember even the Bible that we used. I brought different version of Bible. I said, which one do you understand? Which one makes sense to you? And in the end, we settled on the New Century Version. I thought the message would be great. So no, this is, that we don't like this. And again, it's all down to, again, asking the question, what do you want? So we did that. This youth church started to grow. We then did so many stuff. I mean, it was just incredible seeing story of them praying for each other, reading the Bible, and things happening. One of the things that they said, let's celebrate what God is doing here. It came from them. So we began to do this every year. We do anniversary party, and it was the highlight for them. Some of them would dress very nicely, and they would come with food, and their friends and sometimes their families will show up. And at this point, it was having such an impact on them. Their families will come there, parents will come there. They will say, how amazing that we have this going on. Because earlier on the estate, the only youth club there was run by professionals, Charlton Football Athletic Club. They had money, they had the resources, but it was closed down just within 8 months because of the violence and stuff going on. When I actually went there, the first thing I did, as I was listening to God in the area, I went to volunteer for the youth club because I thought it would give me a better idea. And at that point, the youth club were in the kind of making a decision about closing it because They just couldn't cope with the behavior and the violence and what was going on. So they closed. They had all the resources, but it didn't work. And that actually, going back to the point of prayer, I sat there one day thinking, it's not just strategy that makes this work, it's prayer. Because if I look at the resources that we had compared to what they had, they could have done better than us, but they couldn't survive. But I believe the difference for us was the fact that we prayed, that prayer was at the heart of what we did. So talking about Rick's, we get them involved. They were celebrating the parties. It got to a point we thought part of the way of getting other young people is to hear the young people who have already come to faith. We did a series where they were being interviewed, they were being filmed, professionals came and did stories to tell about what God is doing in their lives. And what I felt again was that young people are the best evangelists. I don't know your context, but sometimes telling the good story of what God has done in their life impacted them. I remember sometimes when we played this at the Friday night youth club, and they hear the stories from their peers, and even seeing the difference that this has made in their life, it speaks volumes than even my little talk. And I've begun to see how God was using the young people to reach out to them. And one of the things that we did also in terms of we didn't want to create a place for them to come. We empowered them to share their faith, invite their friends. And evangelism became something that the young people did themselves. They would invite their friends, and sometimes every Friday we see streams of young people coming, young people inviting their friends, because again, they own it, they see it as their place, and then they feel comfortable inviting their friends. So I'm going to just play this video for us, and then I'll come back. And just an example of how this process works in terms of young people taking the initiative, inviting their friends because they feel comfortable. It's a safe space for them. They want them to come and experience the God that they have experienced. So let me quickly stop sharing them. Let me see how this works. Sorry, I don't know.
Hi, I'm Abby. We're from South East London. I grew up in a Christian family, so I've always known Jesus and God, but I never thought there was a personal connection between me and Jesus. One Friday I went along to youth club, and Nicholas, who's the youth worker that runs the youth club, gave a speech about who Jesus was, what he's done for us, and then said, if you want to know Jesus, then pray this prayer. And then when I got home from youth club, it was a feeling that I couldn't explain. I've never felt anything like it before, and I knew that was Jesus coming into my life as not just some figure that I know rules about, but a friend.
Emma and I have been very close friends for a long time at school, and she invited me to Friday Youth Club one night, and she didn't really say anything about praying or Jesus or Nick doing his speech. But afterwards I said to her, it was what I was looking for, hearing about Jesus and hearing more about him and all the amazing things he's done for us.
Even just saying I'm a Christian to anyone is sort of a weird thing to do, because then it changes you, and you don't want it to change your relationship with the people, because in some ways that can distance you from some people, or at least you think it will. And in my experience it never has. If anything, it's brought me closer, because I believe God sends people to you who are meant to be in your life at that time. He fills you with the confidence, and then if they're the right person, they'll react in the right way. But if I never had the confidence to say, do you want to come along to youth club with me, then you'd never known God, and I would never got to share my faith, which has been probably the most exciting experience ever.
If Emma had never took me along to a youth group, I wouldn't be in the amazing position that I am now and hearing more and more about Jesus.
Sometimes you just have to take that leap of faith, invite that one person or your group of friends or your best friend or anyone, and then you'll never look back, really. It's the best feeling.
Yeah. So that story was just one of many of young people who are growing in their faith. And again, we got to that point because, again, it was a long process of journeying with them, of giving them that space to be able to, come to a place where they feel comfortable to be able to share their faith by inviting their friends. And the story about these two young people, actually Emma and Abby, they went on, they got baptized, and they became adult leaders in the youth group. And it was just beautiful, just seeing that. But again, going back to that point I made again about taking risks, one of the story actually of that I mentioned, if I go back on the screen, is a story of Karen, which was the lady who is now actually running the project when I left. This was a volunteer who had a son with severe health issues, and he couldn't go to any other youth group, even in the area. So she brought the son to our youth group one day, and he said, "Nobody would take my son. Will you allow him to come?" And I said, "Explain to me what the condition is." And when she explained, I said, "Listen, we don't have the expertise to look after your child, but I'm happy to allow your child to come to this youth group if you will come and volunteer with us, because if something happened, you know how to treat your son." And she came just out of that coming to support the son. That one Friday, coming once a week, tend to come in a regular, wanting to volunteer with other groups. We did a DBS for her. And then eventually she became more interested. And through her son, she became a Christian. And she began to volunteer with our project. And then she started to help me to actually do trips. And one of the first trips actually she did with me was to take a group of young people to Leeds when Andy organized a Fresh Expression conference. She shared the driving with me. She became interested, seeing how God was impacting the life of young people, but even the way her son was welcome into that group. I then began to encourage her to pursue training to become a youth worker. I gave a lot of in-house training. I sent her to Church Army to do Explore Vocation Day. To cut a long story short, as we speak, she's, I think in the second year of, Church Army training, will be commissioned maybe next year. When I left, I said, apply for the job. Church Army, there were many people who applied for the job, but they look at her and gave the job to her, not because of her competence, but they see a vocation and a calling. And today she has grown in her competence and confidence. She's leading this youth project in Abbeywood. And again, it was just taking risks like that, praying and asking God to just lead us. And some of these decisions, I don't think that, I could have made it, without the help of God. But it goes to show how we step out in faith and we take the risk and we ask God to lead us. Great things will happen. Now I'm a firm believer that, when Jesus said, "I'll build my church," he says, well, the ministry that we run or we lead is his. And therefore, what is my response? Is pray. It sounded very basic. Pray to him and ask for specific guidance and being intentional. Yes, he's with me. And therefore, I'm going to plan and take the step and the risk that involves. Because I believe that most of us would like to be with the disciples, safe, comfortable in the boat. But none of us want to be Peter sometimes. But I think we sometimes have to just take that risk and be like Peter, even when we fail. And I'm telling you all this beautiful story as if it was all bed of roses. It wasn't. It was hard work. We fail in so many things. But again, whenever we fail, I said, well, the fact that we failed doesn't mean that it's not the will of God. It means that maybe God wants us to do things differently. It means that maybe the time wasn't right. And so we have to revisit our plan and pray, and again, pray and pray. And that is how we did. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the team that were praying with me actually evolved to become a group that met every Monday without fail. For the 6 years that I was there, one of the volunteers hosted them. Every Monday, they'll meet at this volunteer's house and pray for 2 hours for the project. So everything was immersed in prayers. And for me, that was, I would say, if you ask me what made our project fruitful or successful, as people would describe it, I would say it's because of the prayer that people were constantly praying for us. So my question to you, as I round things up, I'm going to open for any question that you may want to ask, but just some questions for you to reflect on. How important is prayer in your thinking and planning as you do your context? Who are your prayer partners? Do you have a team of volunteers who pray with you or for your ministry? What does that look like? And how does being intentional look like in your context? Where do you need to take risk? So these are the things that for me, was something that was very pivotal for the work that we did. Prayer, being intentional, and taking risk.